Okay, good evening. I will open the meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee on this September 23rd. I'm Cheryl Tagayas, the chair, and in the room with me is
Tabor Keeley, member.
And on Zoom, we have member Roxanne.
Hi, Roxanne Musto, Select Board Rep.
And Dick.
Dick Burke, appointed member.
And we are supported so ably by our Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development, Cheyenne.
Cheyenne Frazier, Assistant Director of Planning and Community Development.
And we also have on Zoom, Kyle Johnson. We'll get to Kyle, you can speak further when we get to item on the agenda related to the community initiatives. And let's see, we also have Will Adamczyk, the library director, for when we get to the town center library parking item on the agenda. And we're expecting Regina. I was just checking in with her, but I imagine she'll be joining shortly. And then we have another guest joining us for the town center library parking needs agenda item. So let's go to the next meeting dates, October 21st. And then let's get the November and December penciled in on our calendars. I was looking at November 18th and December 16th.
Okay.
Anybody have conflict on those dates?
Don't know as of yet, so I'll have to take a look. So I'll have to get back to you on that one.
All right, so let's,
I think we did agree on the October one, or at least I have that one.
Yes. I think we did it on the October. So Cheyenne, would you mind just sending out calendar invite holds for those November and December dates, and well, October as well?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, then, next, the approval of the meeting minutes. As I said in the email this afternoon, I was checking my notes and saw that we deferred the minutes from the June 26th meeting. I recirculated those, and then I had previously circulated the minutes from the August 28th meeting. And does anybody have any comments on those minutes?
I do, Cheryl.
You do? Okay.
Yep,
Which
on
one?
the June 26th,
Okay,
towards the bottom, the second paragraph. I don't know if I'm not sure that that's correct spelling for Berkeley, for Chase Berkeley. I think it's L-E-Y.
yeah, you're right. Mhm.
So that's it for that set of minutes.
Okay. And did anybody have any for the 28th?
No.
All right,
No.
so then I will entertain a motion to approve the June 26th as amended and the August 28th as submitted.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, Tabor,
Yes.
Roxanne,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right, next, citizens speak. I don't see anyone in the room besides Tabor and myself. And we already spoke about the folks that we see on Zoom with us, and there's no one in our waiting room. So I will assume we have no one for citizens speak. We'll move to and we have Regina joining us.
Not citizens.
Not citizens speak. We have member Regina Campbell. All right. So we just are at the Grassroots Community Initiatives update. So we're going to start with Kyle, and Kyle, we'll move item 7 up to here as well, the draft letter of support. So we'll talk about two things related to, the Neponset Esplanade initiative. One was the first request, which was to support for the CPC application. And the second is the potential of working together, or at least being some of us host or supportive of the group working with MAPC for the proposal that I sent out earlier. So, Kyle, please give us an update on where you are since you were here before.
Sure. So we've continued to kind of refine our application and have also received support from the Parks Commission, which was a great support. We have done continue to do more informal neighbor conversations, and that has helped, I think, give us some more ideas and some more senses of direction, but still very much feeling the need that we would really benefit from professional support for visioning and community engagement, both in terms of Seven Brush Hill itself and the adjacent parcel that the town owns. And in general, I think, even aside from what happens with DCR property, I think there's a deep need for planning in that part of town to meet recreational and amenity needs and open space needs. So working with the MAPC, I think, would be a huge, huge benefit for our neighborhood, both for this project and beyond.
Okay, so let's take first, I'm going to share the, 1 second, let me share the letter. Okay, I have to share, give me 1 second, managing the host and myself here. All right. Okay. So hopefully everybody had a chance to read this. I shared this with Kyle to see that it would meet their needs for what they were looking for a support letter. So members, you have any questions, comments about the letter?
Well, I really appreciated, one, that it addresses needs that that have been identified for the master plan. Walkable community spaces, improving our walkability. And also, being a member who lives in this part of town, I think the folks in charge of this initiative are dead on that we need more amenities and spaces, especially community spaces on the side of town. So thank you for your hard work on this and for getting community input as well. It's really an important part of the process.
Okay, Tabor?
One thing and then this is, I know, this is a Milton issue, but the city of Boston's site, Edgehill stuff, park planning on the other side, seems like it's an obvious attention to this neck of the woods, meaning that right on the other side of the river, you're going to be able to see the work that they're doing behind the wall, and I think that that's important. The DCR is also planning for a bridge joining the bike path to Belknap neighborhood on the other side, and I think that's it would be a real missed opportunity if we didn't, I'll call it participate, but if we didn't initiate something on our side to say, this is this is a more attractive option to live here than it is even up on the other side of the river. Because, look what the city of Boston's doing. Not that we have to keep up, but it is something that is necessary. And I think it's, the DCR's kick the can down the road as far as they can, and they've got a lot of pressure to do it over there. I don't see the same pressure on the Milton side, but I think the town of Milton and the Parks Department especially could probably participate in this. If we don't do something residential, then something else as an amenity to the town as a whole, but certainly as a walkable neighborhood issue.
So do you know where we would find information about that initiative, Tabor?
for the bridge and all that.
Yes.
I'll send it to you, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great.
Great,
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it, those,
so we could share that with Kyle as
Yeah, I
well.
think the MAPC has some of the stuff, and the Neponset River Watershed,
Okay.
I've gotten it through both.
I didn't realize it was that.
Well, if
that
MAPC
far.
has it, okay, too.
I think MAPC should have some of that
Okay.
information. I mean, this Saturday, just as a plug, we're doing a cleanup,
Hmm,
and one of them is, at the Belmont neighborhood, and the other one is, down at the, Mountain Square Bridge area.
Oh, great.
So they're walkable between the two, but that's part of one of the 30 or so cleanup sites we're doing.
so Kyle, maybe you could spread the word through the network that you've been developing for this about that cleanup.
Yep.
Great, thanks, David.
Oh, so that.
Dick?
I'm still a little unclear. Maybe Kyle can refresh my memory. Who would be the lessor if we put in an application to DCR? Would it be your group, Kyle, or would it be the town?
I mean, at the moment, we're applying as ourselves, and we're in the process of determining whether to form a nonprofit or a cooperative model or even an LLC, and we're exploring all of those options. But we're happy to work with the town in some sort of partnership if the town became interested. You know, our goal is to see it develop into something that will serve the neighborhood through whatever process makes the most sense.
Okay, so currently there's no formal agreement or conversation with the town as to what the town's role would be. You would be responsible, I guess, for raising the monies necessary to renovate or refurbish the building, which I guess, looking at some notes, which is in lieu of actually paying rent to DCR. Is that correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Help me with one more thing. I got a couple of other issues. I'm sort of familiar with the area, but how easy is it to walk to this building from, let's say, the Parkway or from Elliott Street? Or it seems to be a little complicated there. Is this something I'm missing in terms of access?
It's definitely straightforward in the sense of it's not very far and there are crosswalks, but it's a very busy intersection. So there are concerns around that, but most of the crosswalks are ultimately safe.
Okay, and we talked about the parking the last time you were there. I think you told me you had eight parking spots on site, pretty much.
Yeah, I believe it's 8 to 10 is the way it's currently configured.
8 to 10. And the other, I guess the other vehicles, if they were there, drop-offs, pickups, attending events, would just park in the street. Is that pretty much the way it would work?
Yeah, there's open street parking on the other side of Brush Hill, and then plenty of street parking in the kind of side streets off of that or Blue Hill Ave that are in a close walking distance. And it's a long driveway that they have into the place, so I could imagine it being configured in a way to have a drop-off pickup sort of way as well.
Okay, and I guess the last question, I'll be quick on this one, is that we have MAPC as a potential vendor or consultant, I guess, of this project. I looked at the dollar amount. I guess it would be under the $10,000 threshold, so we wouldn't have to put this out for. Does that sound, if the town is involved, does that sound reasonable? Or I guess that makes no difference to you at all, right? As long as the town, you're not looking for the town to pay for this.
Yeah, I mean, if this helps us accomplish this first kind of milestone of getting more community engagement and narrowing down a sense of vision for the area, that accomplishes a lot and puts us in a really good position if we're also receiving CPC funds to have the first major steps kind of already funded. So
the CPC funds that you're looking for would not pay for MAPC, is that correct?
Correct. That'd be for feasibility study and perhaps some early design work if there's enough funding for that as well.
Okay, so who would pay, I guess, who would pay the $8,100 MAPC?
So Dick, I'll jump in here. I'd like for us to discuss using MPIC funds. We have a $30,000 allocation, and $8,100 here, could be seen as a grant towards this community, engagement, which, isn't, as Kyle said, a part of town that hasn't seen. In fact, Tim has identified this is part of town as where he'd like to see some planning effort, just hasn't had the manpower and the funding available to do it. So that's the second part of our, discussion. First part is the letter to the CPC, and
Right.
the second part is whether we would want to use MPIC funds to help with them get started with this visioning.
Okay, well, that's the first I've heard of that, so that sort of ties into a couple of loose ends. So who would be hiring MAPC?
It would be the planning department.
It would be the town, so we would not have to go out for bid, so MAPC could be the preferred vendor, I guess?
Yes, as has been in other initiatives like East Milton Square, Milton Village.
I understand that too, but I'm just
Town Center, yeah.
trying to tie all this thing in together so it doesn't get, we don't tie ourselves in knots because of some bureaucratic action here. So I just want to make sure that, we can talk about that later on. Right now, I'm very comfortable with this letter personally, and to send that to CPC if that's what you're looking for, Cal, right? Initially.
It is. Mm-hmm.
All right, okay. And how much are you looking for, by the way?
From CPC, we requested 30,000.
Okay, and that would pay for, just refresh my memory, I'm sorry.
Primarily the feasibility study and perhaps a first wave of early design, architectural designs.
Okay, and then you would then be responsible going forward of raising money to make the renovations, I guess.
Correct, through other grants or crowdsourcing or some sort of business model.
Did I lose you? Is that me?
I'm here. Yeah, I can repeat.
Yeah, I just lost it there for a minute. I'm just trying to figure out, the responsibilities and financial responsibilities as well as the general responsibilities of all the parties. But as I said, I'm very comfortable with this letter, and good luck with it. As I said, I'm not particularly familiar with the site, but I think I will take a ride by it and take a look firsthand. But I think it sounds fine to me.
Okay, thanks, Dick. How about Roxanne? You have your hand up.
Thanks, Cheryl. So I think the letter overall is very good. The only question I have is at the bottom, the last line in it.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like working with town staff boards and committees, the only thing I would say with that is the town's pretty stretched right now with a lot of things going on in terms of town staff and a lot of changes and things going on. And so there are a lot of things on the plate. I wouldn't want to, if something else comes along too, I mean, we think we got to be careful with how much time the town staff is spending on something like this and boards and committees. So I think it's something we have to be aware of. So I guess my concern is, how much time commitment that would be. And that's all. I think that's my only concern. I think the rest of the letter is very good.
Yeah, it's not, well, I mean, encouraging it because I think they shouldn't work in isolation.
Yeah, I read it more as a nicety rather than a directive, but maybe that's not, I don't know what you meant by it, Cheryl. It seemed more like a closing, like collaborative closing.
Yeah, so like, just with other grants that are, let's say funds that are expended through our budget, they have all gone through planning or engineering, DPW, but most of them through planning. Because we can't engage a consultant directly, we have to go through an entity. So at the very least, I thought that if planning decided, as Tim has discussed previously, that time frees up, this is an area he has said that he wants to concentrate. Whether it's other boards and committees and other staff, I guess it seems a little less direct, but it was just, not to work in isolation idea. So I don't know if that helps, Roxanne, but.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I guess I'm just
Okay.
thinking bigger picture though, how much time commitment and when we get into the money issues later,
Right.
with how much the town is involved in this initiative, I think there are some concerns about that. I have some questions on that when we get to that. But that was my only concern, is just how much time you're talking about, because there's a lot going on, and we're having, some of the departments are having some changes. We're having people leave, things like that. And that's all.
Instead of work, we could change reach out to.
Yeah, I mean, to reach out to let them know about what they're looking at, and get, maybe something like that.
So I just made a change on the screen.
Yeah, I see that
Reach
there.
out to town staff boards and communities to explore the opportunity. It's really just, at this
Yeah.
point, we understand we're supporting the exploration. We're not supporting any particular, recommendation or outcome, just the exploration. Okay, so.
I think that's
then-
better. Yeah, I think that's better, the way that it's phrased.
Okay. All right, so with that then, I will entertain a motion, to authorize me to submit this to Kyle, on behalf of the committee.
Motion to authorize the chair to submit this to Kyle Johnson, on behalf of the committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
You missed it, Tabor got it. All right, so we'll start on the screen this time. All those in favor, Roxanne,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Tabor,
Yes.
Regina?
Yes.
And myself, the chair, Cheryl, yes. Okay, so next, I'll do a different screen share.
And in the meantime, I'll just say thank you. We're very appreciative to have your support and excited to be, working together with you and other committees on this project and related projects.
Great, thank you, Kyle. So Kyle reached out to Tim and a few others back months ago now on this idea. Well, when DCR initiated that request for expression of interest, and Tim participated in the site walk, and there was a sort of brainstorming about how they could get some assistance. And I think that's where this idea of MAPC came up. And Tim's been pursuing it and just hasn't been able to get it to come together until just recently, just this week, I think it was. So, professional facilitation of a visioning process with people who that's their expertise.
Mhm.
That's one of the things that MAPC offers, which, in any kind of, I think, community engagement, we haven't necessarily taken advantage of MAPC for this, but I'm really, I think it would be great to do it here. It's part of town that doesn't get quite as much involvement out of residents. And, if there's a way that we can help get more participation through this professional staff, I think that would be great. So from there, Kyle, why don't you talk a little bit about the visioning aspect of this and what you see that MAPC here and what they've outlined, how it would help you.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah. So I know that they are very good and have a strong kind of portfolio and track record of helping communities talk and reach consensus about their needs and goals as a community. And I think that's something that would be very beneficial as we explore this site, but also the surrounding area. We've heard a lot of things anecdotally. We have a small Google form where we started to get some feedback from people and have started to identify some trends, but would really love to have a more collaborative, expert-led conversation with the neighborhoods about what is feasible, what makes sense, what would meet some of the different goals and needs that we have as a community for, the three that keep popping up are recreational space, community gathering space, and amenities like restaurants or market of some sort. So I think having their help with that community engagement and visioning would be really beneficial to this specifically, but also in general, as we think about, what else our neighborhoods in this part of town could need or want. And I think the planning support that they could help with similarly supports similar goal of helping to articulate what could be possible in that area.
Okay, let's open it up for discussion. Regina, I'll look to you, then Tabor, and then we'll go to the Zoom again.
I think it's a great idea to involve MAPC. I think it's they are underutilized resource, particularly on this side of town. So I strongly support, your efforts and happy to be helpful wherever we can be.
Okay, Tabor?
As the town's rep to the MPIC, I'm happy to see them being used. I think you're right. This is not something we've used them a lot for, but this is something they're probably better at than most other people, especially in town. The visioning process really kind of requires that we look outside our borders, and what we're really experts on is what's inside the borders. And, just as this pedestrian bridge over the Neponset going to Mattapan isn't well known, but it was advertised by the DCR, and, they do a sort of a limited amount of work on, getting the word out. And they do, a lot with very little, but again, something that we all miss kind of regularly. And so we depend on, MAPC does that. That's what they are paying attention. And in this visioning process, you'll probably get something that comes from Everett and something else that comes from Brookline. And those are things that, we as a town don't have the advantage of seeing the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes down to the small picture, that's when we can start making our minds up, because we'll have the best information available. So I do think that's a good idea.
And for both of you, so were you supportive? I'm gonna scroll down to we talked generally about the visioning, but they went through several tasks, and then there's a cost associated with those tasks. And so, the planning department itself doesn't have budget outside of what staff and, expenses, et cetera. So I think that might be changing in future years. They're looking to get planning funds into their budget, so the department's budget, but right now they don't. So while we have 30,000 in our budget for this fiscal year that began July 1, we have an opportunity to consider funding this initiative. So would both of you like to weigh in on whether you would support funding this initiative from our budget?
Absolutely, I think it falls under multiple categories, not the least of which is improving walkability, and addressing the disparities in how different neighborhoods are funded or attended to. I don't remember how it was worded in the master plan, but some of the neighborhood goals. Absolutely, see.
Okay,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
and Tara?
I agree. I think the problem we have had, and this is especially recently, everybody remembers the debacle about the 3A zoning. And I think that it's a matter of education, and, the town, we're all busy. And, we've got like 30 hours a day scheduled into only 24 hours. And, there's no way we can get it all in. So this is, the MAPC does this for a living, and they are pros at it, but you gotta pay it. And that's, I think, what's something that they would be better at than we can be in their own town. Those interactive sessions, visioning sessions that they will hold are important. And, I think Tim did a yeoman's work on the stuff that he did for 3A, but it was overwhelmed. And it just, you do need outside help.
Okay. All right, how about Roxanne next?
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I have some of these facts correct then. So paying the MAPC is going to come from the town. It comes from the MPIC budget, but it's the town is paying for that, correct?
Well,
Technically?
Yeah, I mean, our budget is town budget.
Okay, so the concern I have, and the one concern I have, is that, right now, everyone that knows about the whole MBTA, lawsuit and so forth. With regards to that, MAPC, my understanding is that MAPC they either filed an amicus brief against the town or they signed on to one. And so it's sort of strange that we would pay MAPC if they're taking a different position than the town. It just, until this would get resolved, or I don't know if there are other organizations that we may want to look at that do this kind of work. I just think it's sort of a weird dynamic to do that, you know what I mean? So I wanted to bring that up.
I understand what you bring up. It is the regional planning agency, and we do pay in, and we normally seek out, grant funding, which we have received from them. And this is visioning. It's not even related to zoning. So it's completely different set of people at MAPC as well. So
I guess what I would say
I
is,
take your
for me,
point, but yeah.
I mean, I guess what I would say is, it would have been great if they had not done that, and then I think it would not have been an issue to consider. But I did want to raise that because I was aware of that.
Yeah, I haven't read the amicus briefs, so I don't know what position they've taken, but I understand there's lots and lots of organizations in towns who have signed on, and individuals who have signed on. Residents of town who have signed on. So I don't know if we apply that same criteria across to everyone, every law firm, every agency that's signing on. It seems like it's being pretty selective to select one out of the group. And
I'm just thinking because we would pay them.
Well,
I'm just thinking because if the town is giving them money to do something, you know what I mean? That's all. I just wanted to raise that. That's all.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of that. I appreciate that, Roseanne.
I think the links to the amicus briefs are on the town website. The last I spoke to Tim, that they weren't all there yet, but they were being placed there. I know that he sent a link to a folder to the planning board members. There's a lot of information for me to catch up on. So I haven't read them all yet. All right, how about Dick?
Just a couple of questions in terms of formatting. When we would be hiring, well, let me back it up. Kyle, when do you expect to be submitting your application to DCR?
DCR, we're gonna write them a letter of interest. We're planning early October, in a couple weeks.
And then, do you have any idea? I know I don't mean to put you on the spot, but when would you expect to be sending in an application? I'm not sure how DCR does this. Are there deadlines, or is it just a free-flowing submit an application? We'll take a look at it and we'll let you know type of thing.
It's more the latter. It's not even really at this point an application process. They're asking for interest and demonstrations of interest, and it sounds like it is sort of a open-ended collaborative process from there to see if we'd be a good fit, basically, if it would work out with them. That sounds like how it's gone with others. They've had groups interested in becoming the curator of a property, and they worked with them over several years as they were gathering funds and doing this sort of thing, visioning and planning.
So the beginning is submitting the letter of interest, then you follow up with the application, and then there's some sort of a process afterwards, assuming you're the only applicant, for responsibility of this building. When did you expect to hear from CPC?
My understanding is around the turn of the year, around December, January is when they're aiming to announce.
So we'll find out. And then if the town did hire MAPC, when would they start? Any idea? When are they?
It looked like, October, as early as October. Is that right? Yeah.
So time frame, December of this year through March of next year.
No, that's for test too. Is that just the beginning?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
October.
I'm getting an echo here. So when would they start and when would they finish?
October.
Yeah.
Through April.
Through April. Okay. So given that, their process will be going forward at about the time that Kyle, you'll be submitting your application, right?
Our letter to DCR, yeah, around the same time as when they'd be getting started.
Okay, I thought you said you were gonna put the letter into DCR in October, and then in January
Yes.
you'll be filing an application. No?
January is when we expect to hear from CPC on funding.
On CPC.
DCR has not announced the formality of an application process yet. It sounds like it's a fairly informal process once they see who has interest and what they're able to present as support and funding.
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out. So really, we won't know until after April what, if MAPC is hired, what the consensus or what the feelings are of residents at all, in terms of what should go into this building, right? So that will impact, I'm guessing, your what you would do with the CPC money, but also what your application would look like, I'm guessing.
So
Yeah,
Dick, can I just jump in here? Dick, the CPC funds wouldn't be available until, I believe it's spring. No, not
July.
this spring. It's later. It's, I believe in the summer.
But it's town meeting that has to authorize.
Town meeting has to authorize the expenditure, right? So the funds, the idea would be that this work would happen first, and then CPC funds would be used to build on this work for further detail, for further due diligence.
Okay, so let me just back it up so I have it correct. So in other words, step one, I guess, would be to decide whether or not we would want to recommend to hire MAPC to go forward with that. Then at the same time, or coterminous, Kyle, you would be submitting a letter of interest. Then we'd wait till, I guess, till the end of April to determine what MAPC is recommending, and then we'd have a discussion upon that. And by that time, then you would be putting in your application. So when you're really not looking, you're not really looking to put in an application before June of next year, right?
Well, yeah, DCR has not announced, like I said, a formal application process. So our kind of plan is to give a formal letter of interest, hopefully, hypothetically demonstrating we have, for example, town support helping us work with MAPC on visioning. We have an application into CPC that is making progress and has town support through various committees, demonstrating that we have support and a possible funding or real, at that point, funding channels. And then basically see what they say. Are they willing to work with us, and what else would they require from us as far as a formal application? So I don't know what their timeline would be. Okay,
so but we would be saying the MAPC work to be done will be done not for your project and your group, but just as a town project. Is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding is the request is on behalf of the planning department.
Is that correct, Cheryl?
Well, it says here to work with the town of Milton to facilitate a visioning process to consider what is feasible for this particular site. So if the town were to take, the initiative of wanting to pursue the site itself, I suppose it could come out of that process. But the idea was to do this facilitating to help Kyle's group in putting together their expression of interest. This idea of who's going to be the lessor that you were talking about, right?
Right.
Or has still been a bit up in the air until some of this due diligence work happens. So, it may come out of Kyle's work that the town is not going to be a party to it, but that's not known yet. So the idea is that the planning department is supportive of having a role in this visioning process.
But the way I see it, it's almost like we're reacting to a request or recommendation from the planning department to do some work in a part of town that some people think has been under focused. So this really doesn't have anything to do with Kyle's group. It has to do with the potential of a building that may become available.
Well, it's precipitated by Kyle's group. It's like,
I
okay,
understand,
Kyle-
I understand it's been precipitated, but I think in
Okay.
terms of how we're viewing this, it has to, I think it almost has to be, you know, because MAPC, what may come out of this, Kyle, and I hate to ruin your day here,
Sure.
but it may come out and say, well, what Kyle and his group are proposing is not really what some other people want. So I guess it would have to be that MPIC was reacting to a recommendation from the planning department to do some visioning for this part of the world, of which one of the potential, and probably the only potential user would be Kyle's group. But we're so far behind Kyle in terms of what he has to do. I don't see how we can tie these two things together at this time. So
well,
that's
it says in the proposal, under scope of work, you know, is for MAPC, their community engagement department, to partner with the town of Milton to facilitate a visioning process. But then it also says, to consider what is feasible and possible in a community-oriented use. So that's just using the professional services, professional expertise we have in town and MAPC to help the community-oriented use, which has been brought forth by Kyle. I don't envision that we or MAPC or the planning department would go out and solicit other potential users of this, you know, DCR property. It's very specific to 7 Brush Hill Road.
well, I know, but I think that's what we're focusing in on, and Kyle could be one. He probably will be his group will be the only interested bidder, but I'm thinking there could be others, you know, as a result of this planning process. So I'm just saying that as we move forward on this, just to make it clean, it has to be from MPIC reacting to comments from the planning department, and then we've decided, if we decide this, to hire MAPC to do some visioning for that piece of property and to solicit input and thoughts and options. So it wouldn't be, in other words, what I'm saying is, I want to divorce Kyle from this project and
Yeah, I see.
this initiative.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it could be that another group could come forward and say, hey, look, we are participating in this visioning and we're going to submit too, which they'd be free to do, because you're right, it's town resources that are being applied towards it.
Right.
Like I said, it's prompted by one group, but.
Yeah, well, you know, we haven't picked Kyle's group yet. I mean, it's the only one who's approached us. There may be others, and I'm just thinking to make it clean, if we're going to take a vote on this, it's going to be that we are recommending MAPC funding, taking some monies out of our budget to give to the planning board to enter into agreement with MAPC to do some visioning around a piece of property that just so happened Kyle and his group are very interested in.
Yeah, that's right, Dick, and I think it's stated there in the scope of work that way. It's not the planning board, but the planning department.
I'll have to read it again, but I just want to make sure that there's no mention of Kyle's group in there.
No, yeah, there's not. I asked Tim, Tim sent this to me. I said, Tim, can I share this with Kyle? He said, absolutely. And then I said, and do you see this as something that potential for MPIC to fund? And he said, yes. I said, okay, so I'll take it to the MPIC. So, you know, Tim solicited this from MAPC after conversations and, you know, informal conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I would say it's definitely not exclusive. I think that's your concern, Dick, and
Exactly.
yeah.
I think that's a fair point, I appreciate it, and it does say specifically a visioning process allowing residents to consider what is feasible. Yeah, so I fully support, your point, totally.
Yeah, I think we
Taking a moment to understand what you were getting at there. But
Well,
I'm good.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's just the way my mind works, and I'm trying to keep this thing in a linear fashion here. So I'm just trying to figure out, you know, who's who and who's responsible for what, because I'm conscious about setting precedents on some of this stuff, that if another group comes to us, and, you know, do we feel obligated to a responsibility to also fund them as a group as opposed to doing straight visioning?
Yeah, the one thing about this is they went to the planning department and then, you know, I had conversations with Tim Phillips with the planning department. So there wasn't a direct request for funding from us initially. It was whether we would help work with them, I think, was the initial idea that Kyle, you mentioned last time. But the funding piece of this has followed, so. Okay, so do we have any further discussion on this? Or are we ready to make a decision?
I'm ready.
Roxanne, I see you have your hand raised.
Just a couple of things. One is a typo on
And I
this
see a
letter.
brush on here.
I saw that
Brush
too.
It just popped out
That's
at me, so I
MAPC,
saw
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. I just, I guess I still feel it's sort of a little unclear again to me, like, so I understand this is a visioning for that area and it's not directly tied to that, but so the town is hiring MAPC?
Well,
Yeah.
that's the way it's worked in other planning initiatives, that it goes to the planning department, you know, it's happened in Milton Village when we worked with engineering firms and MAPC, happened in East Milton, where some of our funds, $10,000 went to us as a matching grant fund for the, zoning work in East Milton with MAPC. So the planning department has occasionally come to us and said, we need a grant, a matching fund grant for planning work. And, you know, we've discussed it and use our funds for that purpose. So, it's consistent with what we've done before. It's consistent with, the master plan goals in an area of town, that hasn't yet seen any attention from us or the planning department in my, time on the board. So, it does seem a good opportunity. This 7 Brush Hill Road becoming available is sort of what prompted the opportunity to to kick it off.
It's also to follow up on something that we did a few years back regarding affordable housing in town. And looking at the piece of Milton land that abuts this and reviewing that. And that's not necessarily part of this
Right.
description. But it does happen to be an abutting property, and it is, you know, I think this visioning process will draw a lot of attention to this stretch of Brush Hill Road, which it needs.
Right, it's Parks Department jurisdiction, so I think Cal mentioned Parks Department, you know, and whether we have some joint session with Parks and, Planning Department and MAPC on this, I think that would be great.
Yeah, and so I'll just say that similar to you know, Dick, to your thoughts and questions, I think take my group out of it, other than being citizens who have asked for this. And I think regardless what happens with Brush Hill itself, this has residual benefit for these neighborhoods to get a chance to talk about what we need and how it connects to what DCR is doing on the other side of the river, how it connects to the abutting property, how it connects to traffic in that area. I think there's a lot of benefits it could have in general for all sorts of projects down the road.
Yeah, I agree, Kyle. And I said, didn't mean to put you on the spot on
No,
that.
no. I think the same way. I'm exactly the same. Ambiguous projects boggle my mind. So
all right. Well,
totally
one of the things that I just want to make sure, and this is just a draft proposal, I'm guessing, isn't it, Cheryl? From MAPC?
Yeah.
Okay, because what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at what are the geographic boundaries, or what are we looking at? What's the group going to look at? It says, it just mentions for a piece at a historic building at 7 Brush Hill Road in Milton. Is there, and Tabby, you're talking about land around that. Is this what the vision was also be focused on besides just a building?
The price will probably go up if we include more visioning, but I'm just suggesting that would, you know, be encouraged, because we're gonna be we have looked at that area, this committee has looked at that area. And it's only natural for other people to understand that this is town-owned land that sits right next to it.
Yeah, and so I'm just looking, is it too narrow what the visioning process is? Are they just taking a look at one building? Or are they taking a look at a greater geographic area?
Well, at the moment, it's one building, and one parcel because of the request for expression of interest being timely. But I imagine the scope could be expanded at whether it needed to be at this point in time or somewhere along the process. you know, if it came, it could be something like I could raise with Tim now in terms of, you know, but the other parcel next to it is Parks jurisdiction. We would need to engage with the Parks Department on that as well.
Right.
The park commissioners at least on that. But you know, one thing I think is, having a sort of smaller piece to sort of help with this particular property and then expanding it as the vision comes through. What do people think do we want to broaden or suggest broadening it at the outset?
Well, I would rather see it broadening because I think we're reacting to some comments made by the planning department saying that this area has been neglected by planning over the years. And if now we're just talking about one building, site specific, I think it's sort of a waste of resources. If we're going to have MAPC take a look at what the planning department is telling us, then we should expand the area.
So maybe what we do is, I can talk to Tim about, I mean, part of what I think he was thinking too was related to zoning and where the food mart is, I think, at that juncture of Brook Road. And I don't know if that sort of starts to muddy the water with this particular, the unique circumstances of this particular property. The property right next door is a different scenario, right? Because that's the synergy between these two parcels is there.
What if we took out 7 Brush Hill Road and said lower Brush Hill Road or something? I don't know, just indicating that whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think I think it's too narrow a scope. I just think that it's, you know, if we're really reacting in a macro sense as to what Tim and probably Cheyenne are telling us, that, you know, this area feels like they've been underserved from a planning perspective, then why don't we take advantage of true visioning of which one of the pieces can be 7 Brush Hill Road?
And do we wanna fund that? If it's, let's say it costs,
Should be a lot more.
let's say it costs twice as much, Dick.
What's that?
Let's say it costs twice as much.
Then it costs
Are
twice as much.
we willing to fund that?
Well, then what we're talking about right now is visioning for one piece of property. Is that right? So if it costs more money, then it costs more money. But if we're reacting to what's been told to us by the planning department, as I said earlier, the people think that area has been neglected from a visioning standpoint, shouldn't we be taking a look at a bigger piece of property or a bigger area?
Right. Why don't I ask, we'll bring this back, I'll bring these questions back to Tim. And given that they're ready to get started October, this would push it out to November, since our next meeting would be October.
And the deadline for the CPC application that Kyle could include this in is this Friday. And so it might impact and change the wording that he will be allowed to use. If that letter is not the final version that we're gonna use. Right?
So, but maybe what Kyle could include, if we all agree, is that we support MAPC conducting this scope of work. The question, he doesn't have to say it's specific.
Right, no, I think that's.
Because he's not gonna be able to say it's specific to their application anyway.
Right.
But that work
So
would
that
inform
includes the
their,
parcel at 7 Burchell.
right,
Yeah, no, I think that would be great.
Yeah, no, if I talk to, and especially if I talk to DCR over the next few weeks, it's, you know, letting them know that there's conversations happening about planning in that area.
all right, so is everyone comfortable with that approach? And we'll come back at the next meeting to look at potentially revised geographic area and fee amount?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Carl.
Cheryl?
Roxanne, your hand.
Oh,
A quick question.
It's hard to see it, Roxanne. Your hand's hiding in your cabinet.
yeah, sorry.
That's what somebody told me last time. So we're not taking an official vote. We're just, are we taking an
Well-
official? I'm a little confused here.
We're sending it back before we go.
Yeah, I thought what we were doing is expressing support for the visioning to happen in this location. But that we're not taking a vote on the MAPC scope of work and contract until I take it back to Tim. With the questions of a larger geographic area and possibly including at least the town and parcel next door. I want to get his feedback, you know, he's the professional about how far this should go. And
Right, so-
what the boundaries should be. I don't feel like we should do it. Cheyenne, is that your cat?
Yeah.
So we're just gonna get some feedback, it sounds like, from Tim first before we
Yeah, but
make
in
an
the
official vote
meantime-
on anything, right? Is that what you're
Correct.
basically saying? Okay.
Yeah, but in the meantime, because the application for the 7 Brush Hill Road to the CPC is due on the 25th. I think what I was trying to do is to suggest that it's okay for Kyle to say that the planning department and the MPIC are interested in community visioning in this area.
I think
So-
that part is fine. I'm uncomfortable with right at this point with MAPC because of the official position if we're gonna pay them to do this. So I know,
Has the
I agree with
select
the
board-
visioning part of it, but I just don't know about the organization, that's all.
All right, so I would like clarification from the select board and the town administrator if they're gonna set a policy regarding to any entity that signed on with the amicus briefs. Because otherwise I feel
It's kind of.
how to justify MAPC, excluding MAPC, short of an overall policy.
Well, I think there should at least be a discussion, so definitely, I hear what you're saying. I'm just
Okay.
expressing to you that piece because I didn't know if everybody knew that.
No.
Okay,
And that amicus brief is on the webpage, is that correct?
I didn't see it.
Cheyenne,
but
do you- sorry, one sec, Virginia. Cheyenne, do you know, I know Tim mentioned at our planning board meeting on last Thursday that they were being posted. Is there anything that you could share in the chat with a link to those, that part of the
I'll go ahead
website?
and, yeah, I can do that. I'll just pull it
Or
up.
in an email, follow-up email is fine, you don't have to do it now.
Thanks, Shane.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have one other on the Grassroots Community Initiative. Can you hang with us a bit, Matt and Will? Okay, great. Kiki, you want to introduce your CPC application?
Sure. Yeah, so I represent a group of neighbors that live around Pagoda Circle.
You want to tell people where Pagoda Circle is in
Yeah,
case they don't
Pagoda
know?
Circle, yeah, so it's in P1, it's Hudson Street and
Yeah, you should be able to share.
it's a tiny park and it's, even unclear that it, qualifies as a park, but it's called a park, it is a park and it has a wooded area and an open space area, so there it is in all its glory.
So it's between Blue Hills Parkway and Blue Hill Ave.
Mhm.
Okay,
So it's a little different than other parks, it's in Milton, it doesn't have kind of like this big pole field area, or it doesn't have an actual playground, it doesn't have any structures, it doesn't have anything that you normally would associate with the park, and that's kind of the cool part, because it is kind of very unique, so,
But it's owned by the town.
yeah, it's a park.
it's in the Parks Department jurisdiction, yeah, okay.
So people that live there and have kids around there and sort of visit the park, they really love the wooded area because it looks like when you're in there, it's kind of almost like you're in a real wood, even though it's so small, because it's sort of level and it's got like big stones, and so it's really like kind of exciting and sort of imaginary play and sort of secret and kind of, so, and then there's the open space that I think people also love, because then there's like sort of like just informal play and so. The issues that we feel is that it's kind of a little bit neglected because it doesn't have this kind of, it's not like lots of teams practice sports there, and it's really important to keep it well maintained. So it has kind of, I think, gotten a little bit of a neglect from the park department, and so and then so we got inspired to kind of do something about it, and then now we're kind of discuss with the community what they are interested in, and so we are like different suggestions for the open space and the wooded area. So basically, because the open space is so small, the idea what we would like to do is to sort of level off the area a little bit, so that it could just be a little bit less trip hazard. People have sort of fallen and hit themselves on like stones that are kind of sticking up, and that was also something that Kevin said that it was a bit of a pain to mow because it hasn't really been like maintained in a way, so there's like lots of stones and gaps and just sort of time consuming. And there are also nice things you could do
Yeah, to
that
kind of
kind of
make
make
it
it
sort of
sort of
more
appealing. Oh my god, is that my echo? So and then yeah. To mention next, yeah, sure. Yeah, so what we thought would be reasonable to do at this point is to contact an arborist. So because it's clear that there are lots of mature trees that are not doing well, and for instance, it's like an ancient mulberry tree that is about to die and could fall over at any point in time. And then we would like to see if we could sort of evaluate how we could sort of level out the sunken areas in the space, open space, to be a little bit more user friendly. And then the road. Yes. Talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So there are some traffic concerns in the area. There's, the road has, according to residents, hasn't been paved in 25 years. There's actually cobblestones visible in some parts of some parts of the road that is going away. And since the installation of a stop sign on Blue Hill Terrace, Hudson Street, which borders the circle here, is one of the straightaways that can help connect Blue Hill and Blue Hill Parkway. So we get some pretty high rate of speed travel through that area. And huge volume, so 300 cars a day. Go through this tiny area, according to the police, they put out a traffic reporter to not only capture speed, but also to capture the number of cars coming through. So we want to check into the feasibility of traffic studies to see what kind of traffic mitigation may be applied in this area to make it safer. This is also a major bus stop for local school children. So in addition to the play at the park, normal play at the park, they're also playing out there in the morning and in the afternoon when they're waiting for the bus or being dropped off. So the value for the feasibility study, just to have the folks come in and tell us what is possible, is about $10,000 between the arborist, the architect, and looking at road placement, traffic mitigation stuff. And then you want to continue with the second phase?
Sure. So in the second phase, if we get to that point, then we will sort of, based on our visioning and communication with the community and what the space really allows, is that then we would carry out the tree maintenance and also other plans for the open area. So one thing that we're kind of excited about, I think would really work well in that space, is a Opener garden. I think that that's something that would be perfect for that space, and it could also be, we're sort of visioning that could be kind of like a outdoor garden, outdoor like classroom for like local daycares or Tucker students who come and visit. That would be some kind of like, public engagement. and just a different use of that space. So, and then, what else?
I think matching with the goals of the CPA and our master plan.
Yeah.
Shade tree initiative.
Yes, yes, so yeah, so we feel that these matches the goals of the open space recreation and historic preservation, and also the master plan and the shade tree initiative. So I'm actually meeting with the shade tree people, this week.
So you made your application initial for eligibility to the CPC, and you were deemed eligible, and you've been invited to submit more detailed proposal, right? So that's what this is toward. And then you're also looking to get support from boards and committees and community, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So you'd like for us to consider supporting your application to the CPC.
That would be lovely.
All right. So how about folks have questions for, what they're looking to do with their application to the CPC? Tabor.
To the Pagoda Circle, is that what you're planning on, or want the town to work on replacement, or which road?
Go to circle itself, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and is Pagoda Circle a town road?
Mhm.
So wouldn't that be with the DPW though?
Mhm.
Okay, so you wouldn't be using CPC funds for that, okay, I just want to make sure we're not applying for CPC funds.
No,
Because they can't.
but in terms of a traffic study, that is something that, that we could
Okay, yeah.
use funds for. Mhm.
But not actual road.
Not road work.
Right. So right now, this is early stage studies,
Feasibility stuff, yeah.
right?
Okay.
Other questions?
Taking public comment?
Sure.
I don't think you have enough in your budget for what you want to do, so you should consider increasing the request.
I didn't think it was finalized.
You're right.
I based the budget on some of the proposals that we've seen come through for MPIC, in terms of the arborist, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, I think the traffic study alone could be pretty costly.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even get enough hours from a traffic engineer to give you the data that you want or the information. So I would just increase that, and, you know, contingency is always a nice thing to have, just in case.
Matt, can you give your name for?
Oh, sure, Matt Dollar, resident of 313 Village.
And I think, Tim or Cheyenne may be able to help you with the cost of some of traffic analysis, because the town's engaged. DPW has a contract with Beta, and I'm sure that they could give you an idea.
And initially, we didn't have the traffic, stuff in our initial, proposal, but when we had spoken to residents, it seems that, safety and especially traffic, mitigation is really high on their list. So we spoke to 80 to 85 residents,
Okay.
in the area, and that bubbled up as one of the top 3 concerns, so.
Okay.
And they have separately pursued this traffic angle with the.
And I think it would be good to itemize it, because as you know, there's not enough funds available for all the requests this year. So as you say, probably a multi-phase application process, and maybe other grant funding too, or maybe parks can. I don't know what kind of funding that they've got available, but they do some applications to CPC themselves.
Oh,
Or with others, yeah. Okay, Roxanne, you have your hand raised.
I do. So thank you for coming and explaining everything. I would say with the feasibility of the road replacement. So couple of things with that. The DPW usually has a list of which roads are getting replaced on which years. So they have a list of all of that. I know we're sort of in between a little bit because I don't know if you all know that Chase Berkeley is leaving, if he hasn't already. I think he's leaving this week. This is his last week. So, but he does have a list of the different streets in town and when they're going to be redone. And that is one of the biggest concerns that we have town-wide. We hear this all the time. If you heard at the last town meeting, there was somebody who got up and actually said, we have like $20 million worth of streets that need to be done. And if you drive around the town anywhere, you will see that this is a huge problem. So I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying that there is a huge list of needs for regards to road replacements. And this is probably one of the biggest things that we hear about in roads and traffic calming and so forth. So I just wanted to add that piece in.
Okay, thanks, Roxanne. Dick, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions at all on this.
Okay, and, I mean, I guess I'll say that I find that this is in the neighborhood also that we were just talking about that hasn't had a lot of attention, and I'm glad to see residents taking initiative to improve their neighborhoods and trying to find ways to do it within the CPC funding. So that the reason there's so many applications for so much funding is that people are getting to be familiar with what the potential is for the CPC. And since I sit on the CPC as a planning board representative, there's every one of them is wonderful. So it'd be nice to have funding for all of them. But so I think, you're being realistic with a multi-phase approach. And so I would like to suggest that the committee support offer a letter of support for their application to the CPC. Okay, any objections to that?
No.
Okay, then Tabor, will you make that motion for me?
I'll make the motion that we support the application for the pagoda. What is the name of the group? Is it
Precinct 1.
Precinct 1 pagoda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever the name of the group.
You go to circle, okay.
That we support their application to the CPC.
All right, and since can the support letters follow, or do they need to go in on the 25th? And then, because we wouldn't have time to review a letter if I drafted a letter
But
that's.
they could use that in the application that we voted.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
and then we can submit the letter after the 21st, the meeting on the 21st. All right, so we have a motion from Tabor, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor, Regina?
I'm gonna abstain.
Abstain. Tabor?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Roxanne?
Yes.
And the chair, yes. Last time we didn't actually speak about who would draft the letter, so I took it as chair. So would you like me to draft the letter for this one as well?
Absolutely.
I didn't think anybody would object to me taking work, okay? Great. Thank you for coming in. Thank you, and thank you for your work on it, Regina. All right.
Solid waste meeting, so.
We're gonna come back to item 6, thank you, Kiki, to item 6 that's on the agenda and move to item 8. At the last meeting, I mentioned that I would be willing to do a couple of layouts to show what the parking as standalone parking would be. And I spoke about having individual conversations with folks who are involved in the real estate development, and particularly in public-private partnership. And I mentioned that, maybe 30 units would be a threshold. And so I also did a layout which would show 30 units of housing with 30 parking spaces. And then in all cases, 40 parking spaces for the library, thinking that 10 to 12 that would be found at town hall would get the library to the over 50 that they were seeking. So I'm going to show you those layouts, but first, just on a high level general discussion, I invited Matt Zoller to come in. He's one of the folks that I had spoken to before our last meeting. And really this conversation is for him to provide his expertise and insights into opportunity in public-private partnership, not necessarily the specifics of whether this would, be the final solution that would want to be recommended, but that we could learn from him And so, I'm gonna ask Matt to say a few words and then we can ask him questions, okay?
Great, thanks, Cheryl.
Okay.
Nice to see you all. Saber, doing well. Good to
Yes.
see you. So my name is Matt Zoller. My development company is MPZ Development. Started in 2016 and I've been developing across the Commonwealth since that time, doing mixed income housing developments as public-private partnerships. Prior to starting my own company, I was a project manager with Trinity Financial for 8 years. And I did over 1,000 units of housing across the Commonwealth and into New York City with them. And then, as I said, in 2016, I broke off on my own. Since that time, I've completed 57 units in Bridgewater, the McKelvey School Apartments, which is a mixed income community. And used a lot of resources from the state level and also the town, put their CPA resources into that development to the tune of $1.3 million. That was about a $29 million project. And then I completed a smaller project in the South End, 5 units of veterans housing. HUD dash vouchers are used there. Did a full gut rehab of a brownstone, turned into 5 one-bedroom apartments for formerly homeless veterans. So, yep, that was a great project, and the residents are happy and enjoying their new homes. And then we're about to close on another 54 units in Templeton, which is kind of in the middle, northern part of the state, right by Gardner on Route 2. Another school rehab. So that's hopefully going to close by the end of this year. We'll start construction. And again, another low-income housing tax credit project, mixed income development. And there, the town of Templeton supported the project to the tune of $2 million in CPA funds. I've also been designated as developer in Springfield on another project in a school out there. Schools are kind of my thing. That'll be roughly 58 units of senior affordable housing, partnering with New North Citizens Council. I should also say that on the majority of these development projects, I have another partner in Capstone Communities, a gentleman by the name of Jason Korb. So he and I work together collaboratively in these things. We're also about to start a permitting process in the city of Cambridge for another development. So the first public meeting on that's next month, October 9th. So that's kind of my background. I just say that to let you know the kinds of things I've worked on. And Cheryl reached out to me about this idea. I think it's a phenomenal idea. I'm happy to kind of discuss how these public-private partnerships come together and how these projects are funded. I will say that it is an effort that is collaborative between those who might look to, acquire the parcel and then redevelop it, and then the town, and then the state ultimately, because the state does provide a lot of the resources to get these projects to move. And I'm dedicated to the craft of creating affordable housing through public-private partnerships. It's what I do, and I really enjoy it. And I think I'm optimistic that the town of Milton will really embrace what's necessary and move to create more affordable housing in our community. And I just think that this might be a great site, and I'm also excited to hear what happens with the town farm as it relates to an affordable housing development. So I guess that's enough from me, but I'll answer any questions you have.
So one thing, this idea of funding and financing, there's 2 thoughts around combining the parking for the library with another use such as affordable housing. One is some people feel as if just parking on a scarce asset of land is not a smart move. So combining it with another use where you're stacking uses, would alleviate just making it parking. The second thing is to help use the development, since it's town-owned property, to pay for the public benefit of the parking. So you would kind of get this, so twofer. You have the town has the land, and maybe, you could talk about the value of the land, and then, if CPC funds and what other, sources of funds would be available, how that could be, the parking could be considered infrastructure, and that kind of opens up some sources of funding. So that's some of the things I learned from you when we chatted, so if you could kind of, touch on those.
I mean, big picture, while, some assets, that being land, have, significant value in some locations, municipalities, communities, and others, they aren't as valuable. And so, I think I don't know enough to say what the value of this particular parcel might be. But I know that other assets in the town have commanded a high dollar value for land pricing. You might say that the land is only worth what everybody's willing to allow to go there. So that is a big piece of the conversation, is like, how do we justify the use? I think what we discussed and what I heard from you is that, parking is needed. I know we have somebody from the library here that could kind of speak to that. And so that's highest and best use maybe for that parcel of land. And then the funds to pay for that are not there because, that only the best use of that land is parking. So what we discussed is kind of creating a mixed use asset, where you're adding layers to create more and more value. I think, I don't know, I'm not a market rate developer, so I understand the market rate development community, but I can't speak to how I would evaluate that, specifically. I can give you some thoughts, but you might want to talk to a market rate developer to say, is this of value to you if you have to include 40 parking spaces, right? So I think the answer would probably be no, because those 40 spaces wouldn't be for the residential units that developer builds.
So the profits get limited in that way.
Yeah, I think, it's all capital dollars are hard to come by, especially in this economic environment. But then when you start to talk about the feasibility of a public-private partnership and then adding some affordability, that opens the door to other public resources. I think it's a challenge currently, in addition to economic challenges, but the fact that our community has, passed over some zoning legislation and thus is not eligible for some of the public resources that we might use to fund this parking, mainly being things like the MassWorks program, which is an incredible resource for this exact type of opportunity. So to layer in MassWorks to do site prep and parking, and then allow for a podium to create affordable housing is an incredible opportunity for our community. So hopefully we can get beyond that and figure out a way to reignite the ability to capture those resources and then infuse them into this project. And I think that is an optimistic goal because these things take time. But I think that if we couple what we've discussed, which is the parking, with maybe a small commercial use, it sounds like there's an appetite for that there, coupled with then affordable housing. And we also spoke with the housing authority about that. I think there's some real opportunity to create a truly mixed income, mixed use development at this location that would be the highest and best use. And then the library would parking they need. This commercial use is exciting, although finding an operator to do that is going to be a challenge. So, Tabor can definitely speak to that. But, maybe that you build that into the pro forma, as we did when I did the Ashmont redevelopment, the Treadmark building at Ashmont Station. We got American Provisions as a tenant there, and also Ashmont Cycles, so those were two great uses that came with the way the project was financed. They were subsidized. So I think, there's a lot of models out there for what you're looking to do here. I think that it's totally viable. It just needs to be well thought out and executed. And I think that the value, from my perspective, from a public-private partnership perspective, the value of that land is zero as it relates to, the underwriting but there's a intangible value there that could be created as a result of, putting out an RFP or an RFQ to get some interest for someone to put together the building blocks to create, what Cheryl envisioned, which I think is an awesome idea. So that's some background there. I hope I answered the initial question, but long-winded way of saying, I think it's a great idea and we really should pursue it.
Great, thanks. Questions for Matt?
Rudimentary question, about public-private partnerships like this. How does the land ownership work? And, if the library is still using it, what is the ownership structure, insurance? Like?
Oh, you mean after you build it,
After
it's operating?
Curious, it's beyond the scope of what we need to know, I understand, but,
Yeah,
it's like,
you can structure it as a long-term lease, or a fee simple interest. And then all of those responsibilities go to whoever is signing the lease or owning the fee. So those things go with the ultimate end user. If the parking were to be asset of the towns, that would have to be structured kind of in a condominium structure. So the town would still own the garage, the library would own the garage, and maybe that commercial space, and then the other entity would own the housing, and that's how you would kind of think about that from a legal standpoint. But then that always plays out into operational needs. So day-to-day paying for operating expenses, insurance, taxes, all those things. That's the other thing, this were to become a public-private partnership, there would be an opportunity for the town to realize tax growth. So, because right now, the town just owns it. So that's one of the things that's nice about a public-private partnership, is this intersection of the private market coming in and contributing back to the community. It might not be right away, but it's, you gotta think about these things as a long-term investment.
thank you.
What do you, is there a rule of thumb, or do you have a gut feel on the economies of scale here? I mean, obviously, the efficiency going from 1 unit to 2 unit to 3 unit to 4, you're very steep incline, but at some point it tapers off to that each individual incremental unit is no longer helping average out to a cheaper price. Where do you get to that?
Yeah, so I think that has to do with a lot of things.
I mean, the parking spaces and the units.
Yeah, I do think like net, there's not really a number that would get you to creating economies of scale here, so to speak.
Okay.
Cause from a housing standpoint, you wanna build a building that's maybe a walk-up type scenario, because then you don't have to invest in an elevator, and that's wood frame construction, so you're not triggering high-rise code. So you want a certain number of units for financing purposes, but you don't want to trigger those next steps to make it more expensive than it needs to be. With the parking, there is the benefit to creating a podium, so to speak, right? So you could put 5 stories above that, which that's still wood frame construction. So you could do a pretty dense development here. I'm pro density, so that would just be me saying, go for as many units as you can. That helps to spread that cost per unit out over more units, which is helpful when trying to get these things financed. But I don't think it's going to make or break the economics.
But Matt, you did tell me that about 30 units was a commercial. Right?
So for financing purposes, I want to be clear about that, if you were to go the route of doing this as a mixed income development using things like the low-income housing tax credit and the state low-income housing tax credit, you know, those projects really need to be 30 or more units.
So when you say mixed income, that means some are affordable and some are market rate?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a varied scale. I think the low-income housing tax credit program has certain requirements. We could go into detail on that, but it's up to 60% of AMI for a certain number of those units. And then anything above that, you know, is depending on map, could be a market rate unit, could be an 80% of AMI unit using workforce housing resource. There's a lot of different resources out there. Thankfully, you know, the state passed $5.1 million bond bill with a lot of resources in it to create more mixed income housing. And so, again, I think another resource Milton could tap to create more affordable housing in the community, mixed income housing, workforce housing, all of the terms that come with these types of developments.
And workforce housing is something that a lot of Milton families back in the 40s, 50s took advantage of to build.
All of our houses are
We have
workforce housing and in some
a
respects,
lot of built for firefighters and police officers and.
folks going back into the service. You know, there's a lot of history there, and you know, we have resources to build things up to 120% of the area median income. You know, so we're talking about percentages and numbers here. I think it would be helpful for everybody to see whole dollar values on these things.
Well, 80% AMI now for a family of four is what, $100,000 about?
Yeah. Not a lot of money. Yeah, unfortunately, but you know, it's good to be thinking about it in that way. So, yeah. Hopefully that makes
Does it
sense.
matter whether you're renting or owning? Is there a different formula?
You'll get a different type of developer interested in the two different things. So myself, I only do rental housing. And another type of developer would do for sale housing. So it's just not, it's a risk thing, you know, it's how you run your business, and so that dictates what you would choose to do as it relates to for sale or rental.
When you mentioned multiple sources of funding, can you just give an idea what a stack is on one of yours?
The number of sources of funds?
And just some of the names of the
Sure.
types of, yeah.
Yeah, so in any particular transaction, we'll have upwards of 20 sources of funding.
Wow.
We use things like affordable housing trust funds, state and local home funds, state and local CPA funds have been a huge benefit to the types of developments that we're discussing, because we check the affordable housing box, the preservation box, and sometimes open space, although that is unique. So, and then there's some discretionary money around the CPA resources. Sure.
Does Maha offer funds?
So Maha, Massachusetts Affordable Housing Association, I think, they are geared towards home ownership and resources, assistance.
On the purchasing end.
Yeah, for buyers specifically. I actually participated in their program when I first moved to Boston for a first time home buyer program. Great. Yeah, there you go. But MHP, Massachusetts Housing Partnership, provides permanent financing. Mass Housing provides all types of financing. And then at the state level, there's, again, Affordable Housing Trust, the transit-oriented development funding, the state low-income housing tax credit, the federal low-income housing tax credit, which can be a 9% credit or 4% credit. I'm gonna start losing people on this. The list goes on and on, Cheryl. That's to say, it's a lot of different things that come together to allow for the creation of these.
Is conventional lending a part of it in any way?
Yes, yeah, because these programs, you know, require that people are working and can pay their rent. And so if you're paying your rent, then you can leverage additional debt, private debt off of that income. So, for example, my East Springfield Street development in the South End, Denham Savings Bank has a first mortgage on that building. They also provided construction financing for that building. So yes, these developments are very real from that standpoint.
Well, we have our finance guru here who hasn't raised his hand yet, but Dick, do you have any questions or dialogue you want to engage Matt with here?
Now, just one quick question, and you may have answered this. It's getting a little noisy on the Zoom call. What would the typical tax benefits to the town be on one of your projects? Let's say hypothetically a 30-unit rental apartment at this site, just so I get some idea of what could the town be looking for in terms of revenue?
So I've used a number kind of when I've been in communities that typically is about over time, over a 10-year period, about $100,000 a unit in taxes and fees, right? So not only are you generating taxes based on the income, right? Because the assessor is going to do the income approach and figure out what the tax rate is and ultimately what those units will yield. But also municipal fees, excise taxes on the cars that will be a part of the redevelopment, water and sewer fees.
I'm for my purposes, I'm just interested in the real estate side of it, real estate taxes. I can figure out the rest of it, but I'm just curious as to what should the town be looking at in terms of real estate tax.
Yeah, I can't give you a definitive number on a per unit basis. I just don't know. Each municipality is so different. You could look at your tax bill and maybe that would give you an idea for a single family home and maybe reduce it to some degree. So, a couple grand per unit to be conservative per year.
But the $2,000 per unit per year, about would be right.
That's probably light. I'd say probably more like
5,000. Okay, that's good enough. That's what I needed to know, really.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a sense of, as I said, every town, as you're familiar with, has their own idiosyncratic type funding issues and cost issues, and Milton is not. Is really part of that, giving our very limited commercial tax base. So I'm trying to get a sense of what the cost benefit of something like this would be. I get the affordable housing.
I'm not committing to that, but I'm just saying generally that sounds about right to me.
That's fine. No, that's good. That's a ballpark. That's all. I'm not holding your feet to the fire on it. I just need a
no problem.
Okay.
What type of square footage are you talking about for units? If we were on the 30-unit pathway.
Yeah, I think, it depends is an answer, but, for a 1-bedroom, 650 square feet, 2-bedroom, 800 to 950 square feet, and then 3-bed could be 11 to 1,200 square feet. Yeah. So family size units, I think.
Some sources of funding require the family size,
They do.
right?
Yes, and there are design guidelines for what is considered family housing through HLC and the tax credit program. So those are stipulated.
Are there more funds available for family housing as compared to senior housing, or is it reversed? There's more for senior than family? Or does it?
I think it depends is an answer. I don't know specifically, and I can't speak to that. But they're two very different funding programs, and they're two very different design guidelines. So, senior housing is primarily ones, and some 2-bedroom units, very few though, where family housing is 65% 2s and 3s. And the rest can be ones, not really studios. They don't make a whole lot of sense a lot of the time. So that's kind of the breakdown on the unit size.
And then, another sort of broader question. This idea, this public-private partnership in this case, where it's not just solving an affordable housing, challenge in the town, but combining another, public benefit. Do you see that very often?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about how you ultimately write the RFP to dispose of the land, because chapter 30B is the mechanism that Commonwealth uses to sell property. Unless there's a redevelopment authority, or it's the city of Cambridge or city of Boston. It's very prescriptive, how you go about that process. And the best thing you can do is what you're doing right now, is starting a community engagement process. Kind of speaking to what you guys were talking about previously, I think bringing in MAPC or MHP to help get some community input ahead of anything is the right approach. That way you can say definitively, we talked to the community and this is something that they're interested in, and then you can put that into the RFP, and having the planning department, informed as they write the document that's either gonna dictate the long-term lease or the sale of publicly owned property. I think that's a really important step.
Great. Roxanne, did you have any, questions for Matt?
I don't have anything specific at this time, except just a quick question. So how many parking spots are per unit, and how do you patrol that if you're having a mixed use?
So that would be a shared parking agreement to some degree. I think you'd have to have in a development like this, where on off hours, maybe residents use the parking spaces, and then the library uses it, or a number of spaces are dedicated to the library. Parking requirements are dictated by zoning.
But for a development in this location, such as we've been discussing, I think you had said 1 space per unit,
Yeah,
right?
for a family
Is
development.
that standard?
No, I think it varies. In affordable housing, typically the parking ratio had historically been about 0.7 per unit. This location is accessible by transit, and that there's a bus stop not far away. And if you take a little bit further of a walk, you can actually get to the T. So that would play into that, but I think a traffic study would help determine, what's required. I think,
So when you've answered, an RFP request, is it normally in the RFP what the parking requirements can be, or do you determine that based on what you think the market in that development needs?
so I think, it helps to have an informed community on that piece, so, maybe you stipulate that it's gonna be a friendly 40B and the parking ratio could be something like 1 space per unit. Because if you use your zoning code, it's gonna be antiquated calculation, that's not really true to the market.
But you're gonna wanna make sure, especially if you lease these, that 2 years from now, when it's all full, nobody wants to move in now because there's no parking.
That's exactly right, you definitely wanna make sure that the library has what they need and the developer has what they need, and you don't wanna build a development that doesn't have a space for, the grandparent who wants to come visit, they can't find a place to park, so you wanna be thinking about that proactively. In all of our developments, we market our units with parking, and we're very sensitive to the parking ratios and understanding what that needs to look like from the outset.
How about that grandparent that wants to come take the kids to the library for story time?
Right?
You can't park in both spaces.
Interesting.
I mean, that was one of the kind of interesting, I think, synergies when you think about this location and combining it with parking. I mean, this idea of parking in library, is something that's being done in other cities and in Boston, in fact. Not necessarily just parking, but this idea that you're going to have housing with another, community use. It's really interesting that that's being embraced in a number of places. All right, well, Matt, unless there's any other questions anyone has. I really appreciate your taking the time to
Thanks, Matt.
talk to me on the phone and come in today.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be a resource for you guys. And,
Thank you.
yeah, no, I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm glad you're being forward thinking on this, and, you know, like I said, anything we can do to create more housing, across the Commonwealth is great. We all need to be focused on this right now, because we, you know, we're gonna lose our market share, and all the great people that we have are gonna move away.
Well, I like that being more in control than we get to be in the 40B projects. Because every one of those that I've seen in Milton, you wouldn't design it that way. I don't think, every developer, you don't do 40B work for a reason, I'm sure.
I do friendly 40B work. I think 40B is one of the best tools we have in the Commonwealth to be able to design creatively and proactively. So I think in the right scenario, it's a great tool. Unfortunately, Milton hasn't been in a position, at least that I'm familiar with, that there was a friendly 40B
Right.
conversation. But I think, you know,
I would say the most friendly was the Parkway, Little Parkway one, but the others, there was no flexibility or even any interest in engagement and discussion, you know, about what's the right kind of development on those
Well, East
sites.
Milton started off that way with, initially, right next to the fruit center, but then when they didn't get their way, they went unfriendly for you.
so if we're proactive in our housing decisions, you know, we're not put in that position.
Right, yeah,
So
I guess that
something
was what I meant,
Yeah.
when I said, when we can plan and not have I should have said the hostile 40Bs. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you all. Thanks everybody on the screen.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna show you, the layouts, that I discussed. Everybody see those okay? So option A is just called that because it's this mixed use that we've been talking about, but it's a different footprint and configuration a bit because I wanted to see how big it would be to do 40 parking spaces for the library and 30 units, since that's what I heard was the threshold. So that's the footprint, and I'll go into that a little bit more. And then option C, there's gonna be an option B that.
I was gonna say, yes, it's gonna be.
There'll be an option B, which I'll get to next, but option C is a parking lot in the grass area in front of the police station. That's 40 spaces right there in that, the way that's drawn in that blue. Then, option B, you can see, is about the same footprint as what I showed before. That's one level, 40 spaces, library parking only.
Can you go back one? I just wanna see C versus B.
Just moved it, it's moved a little bit
The
further away
same
from the
curve cut,
street,
just a
but
slightly different.
But you need
Yeah.
the room to do the ramp for up
yes,
and down.
right. You need a little bit more distance to get down. But I took it away from going down on the side, so you're entering right into the building. And you'll see, I put a small commercial space fronting the street so that you're really having you're kind of moving away from the street with your parking use, so what you're seeing is more active use. And so you'll see,
And ideally more attractive.
ideally, that's the idea, right? And then, so this is the same kind of detail that I did on the other scenarios, where, let me just. On the left is the footprint would be the ground floor, the top one. And, you can see the powder house is slightly relocated. It has 2 drives in. And then it has, an entrance to residential up above with either a commercial, small commercial, 1,700 square feet, or residential common area. So it's common in residential buildings of 30 units to have common area. And then a level below, because of the topography, just like we were saying we could do before, you would have the 40 parking spaces dedicated to the library. Up above, you would have 2 floors. This is 28 units. Just to get, again, this is really just to get an idea for how big this would be if this were, because the 20 units and 50 parking spaces wasn't enough for the library or for this kind of a public-private partnership. On the right, you can see that the total parking spaces, the height from the street is 35 feet, which is what we allow in all our residential districts. It gets a little taller as the land slopes away. So at the backside, it goes from 45 to 55 at the highest point, but that's a slope. And then,
And no one sees that except the police station.
well, you probably see it from Highland, depending upon the tree cover.
Okay.
So this on the left is the option B. If you just did a parking lot, you have to do a structure still or some fill with a retaining wall because of the slope and the topography. I kind of made it a little lower than the highest point, so that it can mediate between the low and the high points for this purpose of this drawing. But that's 40 parking spaces with a slightly relocated powder house. And then the drawing on the right is the 40 space lot on Highland at the police station. So these are just an update to what we had before. What I think we've talked a lot about costs. What I wanted to suggest is that we get Fogarty, AM Fogarty, to provide a cost estimate.
They were the ones that did the last.
They were the ones that did the last one. I asked him to ask Fogarty what the cost would be. We don't have that back yet. I'd like to suggest that we consider authorizing 5,000 like we did before, to estimate these. And then I think we're at a point where we can wrap this kind of package up. We could, put it in a little, I'd say a summary report that we could deliver to the library trustees, that we could deliver to the select board for next steps. If they decide that there's potential in one of these that we should be further involved with, Matt said some community engagement, then we could talk about that, but
But you're talking about just handing this off to select board and library.
I'm suggesting that I think we've hit the end of the options. We've looked at lots of options. We don't have them all here tonight, but we've got the whole, the list of options. We think we can get 12 spaces approximately around town hall. So this 40 plus those 12 would get us to 52 for the library's request. From what I think we've learned, there's not additional capacity to be found within the existing parking spaces at the time that the library needs them. But I'm open to suggestions about what you think for next steps. So we can have some discussion, whoever would like to. I see Will has his hand up. Will.
Thanks, Cheryl. I just wanted to say that the trustees would be committed to splitting the cost of the estimate if that's going forward.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, well, since you're there, this is Dick Burke. I have a couple of questions for you. And I think probably I have this, but we've been talking about this project, I think, since January. So I'm glad to hear, Cheryl, that we're interested in sort of wrapping this thing up at some point. How many spaces do you currently need for your employees and the programs you're running today? The way I'm looking at it, I thank you for your summary. I think you said you had 58 today, 15 are pretty much used by your staff, and then which leaves you with 43. just for the time being, just so I can get some sort of a frame of reference here, how many do you need today just to handle current needs?
20 to 25 just to handle the current overflow without expansion.
Okay. Now, as we get into the expansion, if you had conversations with, I guess you people report, I guess, not only to your board, but also to the town manager. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have a relationship with the town administrator as well. Yes.
Okay. So if you had conversations with him about this potential expansion and the cost and everything else associated with it?
Yeah, we have a 5-year strategic plan that the library has. Part of that is a financial and staffing plan, as well as like facilities plan. And we update the town administrator regularly on that, but at least annually in an official capacity. But I have conversations more regularly.
Okay, so he's pretty much on board with this expansion idea if we can get you the parking.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it still would mean down the road adding staffing, but that's part of our long-term financial plan.
Okay, I just want to make sure we just have this thing in sort of sequence here.
Sure, absolutely.
So then you need an additional, you need 20 to 25 today, and then you would need an additional, if we're going out, adding, I think I saw you were adding about 20% capacity to your current programming. Is that about right?
That's about right.
Okay, so how many additional spots do you need for that?
Yeah, so that would mean that would need another, well, ideally another 40, but we were looking another 25 to 30 for that.
25 to 30 for a 20% expansion, right?
Right.
Okay. One other question I have, we're talking about one of the, and I thought it was interesting. You talked about usage for the town, for town meetings and things along those lines. And what time do you close at night?
9 p.m.
You close at 9, okay. I don't know why I thought you closed at 8, but okay. You close at 9, and you don't have any expectations or plans to have it later than that, because you know some of these meetings like ours and some of the others will go later.
We have the capability to do that. We don't currently have custodians,
Okay.
so it would be a conversation with the consolidated facilities probably.
Okie doke. So that's fine. And that's pretty much what I had for you, Will. Thanks a lot for updating.
All right. No, thanks for the questions.
Great information.
Okay, other questions, comments?
Well, one of the things, Cheryl, is we've gone from talking about initially, going back through my notes, we started talking about expansion of parking for the library, and now we're talking about affordable housing. I think I still need some information on the pay for in terms of how much benefit we're going to receive from the developer. I mean, are we selling the land? Is that what we're going to be doing?
I think there's different ways to approach it. It could be a long-term lease.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if it were, I mean, this is an alternative to doing just parking, right? It's something, I don't have the answers to an exact how this would be written as a request for an RFP, but maybe we would have some consulting service, whether it's us or someone else who leads it, to kind of run through what might make sense before an RFP. But I think you could also issue requests for expression of interest and kind of see what the marketplace tells you is a way to structure it. But so I don't know the exact answer.
Okay.
How that would work.
And that request for interest would come from the town. It wouldn't come from us.
Right.
Yeah. So we would recommend, I guess, in a perfect sense, we'd recommend to the town. We think affordable housing would be a good match for this, and would pay somewhere between, I don't know, what do you say, between 60 and 100, and I guess that, well, he said $5,000 a unit. That sounds a little high to me, but let's say $4,000 a unit. So the town would receive about $120,000 in taxes for that. And then in return, we get a lease payment from the town if we leased it. And then on top of that, or if we sold it, we'd get a one-time cash payment, right?
Right, yeah, like, what I had spoken to him about before was, could we get all the parking paid for? And they said, he and the other developer said, not unless you did like 60 units, could you get all the parking paid for? And I said,
Okay.
well, I don't think 60 units is anything that this site can support, so what's the minimum threshold? He said, you know, that could be 30, and in that conversation, and I didn't ask him tonight, but he thought you could get half of that parking paid for when we were talking about 5 million. But we don't know the numbers on something like this now, because we only had something priced that was smaller. You usually get, like he said, economy of scale. So it might not be 84,000 of space anymore if you have more spaces and you have more units. So that's why I'd like to see us, you know, proceed with getting the cost estimates.
Okay.
So we can have a better idea of the cost of all three.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile getting an estimate. I'm just telling you, I have a real problem with adding any sort of traffic to Canton Avenue. Given, as you know, Cheryl, living on Canton Avenue, we're just looking at the traffic. I'm looking at some of the projects we have starting up with Walcott Woods and working its way down, you know, to your 40B, certainly with the memory care, with the potential new high school, with the expansion of the emergency room at the hospital, with the additional traffic, obviously, that we're going to get from the closing at the county hospital. There's an awful lot of action going down Canton Avenue, and adding any permanent units is something that would give me pause as to the appropriateness of it. Plus, I think probably the project will be litigated through, unless we could buy the neighbor. I would imagine the neighbor would have some issues with that too, but that's a whole different issue. But anyways, that's why, I mean, I'm certainly on board with supporting the additional parking to meet the needs of the library right now. I think in terms of expansion, I think Will answered my questions, as long as we're sure that the town administrator is on board with the additional, you know, cost of staffing for these programs. I think I could probably be, I'm not there yet, but I could be convinced, but I'm going to have a hard time with the affordable housing. But
Okay, thanks, Dick.
It's Dick, can I get you to clarify something? Is it the affordable part or just the housing part?
no, as I said earlier, I said I'm really against any sort of adding additional traffic to Canton Avenue.
No, I just wanted to clarify that last
Yeah, no,
statement.
I want to be clear. I want to be clear also. I said, you know, we have the town farm that's currently being discussed right now. I just think there's an awful lot of action, quite frankly, on Canton Avenue. And I'm just wondering how much, you know, as a two-lane street, how much can we handle it before we start choking off other opportunities?
I just wanted to make sure that you were on record saying it was.
Yeah.
Regina, I appreciate that. I didn't make myself clear, but thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, you know, I'm just gonna mention, you know, the kind of housing can make a difference too. You know, Winter Valley's doing a 34-unit expansion, and the traffic, evaluation for that is very, very negligible. And you know, as someone, as you know, Dick, I comment on living on Canton Ave. There's the traffic coming in and out of I think it's like 180 units at Winter Valley. It's like I barely run into a car going in and out of there. So it really does depend on the type of housing and the type of use, I think, on what kind of traffic it's going to generate.
Oh, yeah, maybe,
yeah.
but you know, my son lives on Atherton Street, so I understand. I listen to his stories every day about driving his son to daycare at Center Street, at the Center School. So I hear about firsthand, like every day, about the congestion of the traffic, how long it takes. So he probably is going at times that aren't quite advantageous to his commute. But I'm just saying that right now, in terms of that traffic, just that one stretch going from Walcott Woods as an example, working us all the way down to the library, I think there's an awful lot of volume.
Yeah, I'll say that again, as a regular user, I try and time, around the high school start and, end times, because that's really clogs up Canton Ave at that time. And it'd be nice if the high schoolers could ride their bikes to school rather than drive, but, or take a bus, but, anyway, as
Okay.
far as, Regina, I think you were ready to say something?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, just thinking about, Dick's concern about traffic. Did we ever consider a rear approach to this, structure from Highland, or is that just not even reasonably?
Crossing a brook.
Across the wetland
Oh, there's a-
resource,
It was
stream, yeah.
Got it, no worries.
Well, I'm not sure it's a stream, but it's definitely a wetland resource,
And you
yeah.
have to cross, you need a bridge.
Okay,
It's like mega bucks.
and we're done, thank you.
All right, so as a next step, do we have agreement about, I mean, we'll need to confirm the price, but if the library is willing to, do a match, and let's say we said right now, let's just say maybe it'll be a little more expensive to do the 3, so let's say it's 6,000 instead of the 5. Would we, be supportive of using $3,000 of MPIC funds, and assuming that the library will come up with 3,000 to secure the estimates for these 3 schemes?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, and so we would need to take a vote on that,
Okay.
if anyone would like
Are
to.
we being specific as to what amount it is? I mean,
Just
obviously.
saying authorizing up to that amount, we'll
Okay.
have to get the proposal.
Do you think that's enough clearance?
6,000.
If it's not, we'll just have to come back, but
Can we clear 5,000? Just in case?
each,
Yeah,
from each board.
yeah, I mean, we can't clear them, but yes,
Right.
5,000.
Will, do you have a sense of the threshold dollar amount that,
I think that would be, I think 5,000 would be okay.
all right, so that's fine, if you want to authorize up to
Motion
5,000.
to authorize up to $5,000 for the exploration of these 3 options for a public-private partnership around library parking.
And do you want to say with the understanding that the library trustees will
With
be
the
matched?
understanding that the library trustees will contribute the other up to $5,000 matching funds.
Thank you, Regina, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, let's do a roll call vote. Regina,
Yes.
Tabor,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Roxanne,
Yes.
and Cheryl, the chair, yes. Okay.
You're
Will-
killing it tonight, guys, killing it, that's great.
Will, is there anything, that you would need for your trustees, to take their vote? Do you need anything from us? Like,
No.
any of
I think we're okay. Once, will Tim be getting the quote, or will you, or?
I'm working with Cheyenne and Tim to
Cheyenne.
get it,
Okay.
yes, so as
Yep.
soon as they get it, they can send it to you, Will?
Yeah, as long as they communicate with me, we can work that part of it out.
Okay, and if
Thank
we
you.
don't, if we can't get Fogarty, I think we should seek someone else if they're not responsive, because they have taken some time. I just think it's important for decision making to have the cost estimates, so that
Yes.
not who does
All in
them.
the dark on
As long as they're professional cost estimator, I don't think it matters who does them. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's the same person who did it before, I guess that's what I'm saying.
We don't have to get bids on that.
Not for this, yeah. Okay, are we all set with that item on the agenda? There's 2 more items I want to spend a
Thank
few
you.
minutes on.
Good night.
Thank you, Will, appreciate it. All right, on the community health assessment in relation to the MPIC, we'll defer that to another meeting. But Roxanne, I know that you were involved in that, at least as on the Board of Health. And I was
Right.
wondering if it made sense, just because there's a lot, I mean, I've only read part of it. Honestly, I haven't gotten through it all yet. There's so much material right now, Cheyenne, from the planning department for me to work my way through. But I know Cheyenne has gone through it, and she and Tim have. So maybe at the next meeting, the two of you can, kind of run us through it and how you think it ties into the master plan. And whether, there's anything that we might want to either, if at a very minimum, refer to in our report or in our tracking sheet. But if there's anything else that we should consider doing related to it. So does that make sense?
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that'll be our next meeting. Then on the report, Elaine had asked me and Tabor asked me before the meeting, like, should we come up with some kind of structure format that everyone can use so that we don't have like, you know, different approaches to it. And so I'm open, to, hey, right, Regina, you write, right?
I do, would you like some Canva prettiness to the template?
Yeah.
Either an outline or some kind of a prompt.
Yeah, I think if we had a prompt for everyone, and an outline, and then we start to populate it, that would be helpful, I think, to set up that
So,
structure.
and not necessarily a lot of verbiage, but more like bullet statements
Yeah.
that say, these are the things that we did or didn't.
I had circulated a table of contents before, I can send that to you again, Regina, if you need it. And you have, does everyone still have access to the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I know it was, there's some things when there's a staff change, like I know that we lose some things, like the folder, so if we don't have access, I'll be in touch, Shane, okay? There was Josh hadn't set up the folder with the spreadsheet of the tracking spreadsheet. Actually, I think it's been through probably at least three assistants. Three assistants at least, since we started it, but, okay, so great, Regina, thank you so much. And with that, I think, we're ready for adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? Regina,
Aye.
Tabor, Roxanne,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
and the chair, yes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.